Here's a fine challenge by Cole, and it's led to Dwight Yorke.
And Samuel's leading Danielson and Merry Dance. Now what's the ball in like? Not bad! Yorke can't quite stretch, and Yorke scores! Great finish by Dwight Yorke. Stern-John went for it near post. Yorke stretched and claimed and thumps it into the roof of the net.
Right, so as promised, I have with us Trinidad and Tobago's most celebrated footballer, probably the Caribbean's most celebrated footballer, certainly one of the most in CONCACAF, and he has achieved everything that there is to be at the top tier level in European football. Dwight, how's everything?
Yeah, great, Sean. Looking forward to the conversation. I haven't had a conversation like this in a while. I've just been keeping myself pretty much busy. Certainly with the pandemic, kind of restraining us quite a bit. Can't do some of the things that you love doing. So just being mindful of that, but trying to get by as best as you can.
Yeah, certainly. And following you on your social media pages on Instagram and stuff, and obviously still keeping very fit. And I know you had some really good company in recent times. Both of you are trying to challenge each other. Tell us about that. How did that go?
I'm not sure about challenging each other. No, it's just great to see my friend really taking up the fitness aspect of it. He's kind of tore with it for a bit. Obviously he's very successful himself. Then he understands the fitness element of it. I think they used to mock me as to why I don't take a break and all of this kind of stuff. But it's good to see Mr. Lara is really taking up a serious note in trying to make sure and keep himself in good nick and keep himself healthy. And the next person that we have to work on is Russell, trying to get him to lose some of that little bit of baggage that he's carrying around with him. So that's my next challenge.
Yeah, you would have to have that conversation with him. I can't tell him anything about that. But Dwight, the interesting thing as we're talking about Brian, we know the sort of maniac you were from a fitness standpoint. We always saw it. But, you look at Brian and we never saw that side of him. And you always have to ask yourself, how did he manage to do it? Because to be the sort of athlete that he was, clearly there had to be something on the physical side that he was doing right as well. What do you know about that? I mean, to be the batsman he was, being out there for long hours, I mean, there's something that has to be happening.
No, I think Brian's biggest strength is his mental strength. His concentration level is exceed anybody else that I've ever come across. And I think that's probably one of his strengths. Apart from his natural ability, but being able to, you got to keep yourself certainly a level of fitness, maybe not the type of fitness when, compared to being a footballer, but certainly in the 90s or the late 90s and the early 21st century, people start to get a clear understanding of, what fitness. I think Tiger Woods has kind of set the benchmark as to fitness in golf, and everybody's kind of catch on to it later on. But, we understand that a certain element of fitness does enhance you to perform to your best. And so, although people may not think cricket was having to be the most physical aspect of it, but where Lara was concerned, I think where he excelled, apart from his natural ability, his concentration level, being able to see the shot and pick up and when to be patient. And I think that's one of his main strengths. When we play golf occasionally for 4 hours, you can see his concentration, whereas mine for an hour and a half, which is what I play football for. After that, I'm kind of switching off. He just start getting stronger and stronger. So that's something I've learned from him. So yeah, it's one of his biggest strengths. But I'm so glad now that he can see the physical aspect, especially when you get older, what it means and what it does for you to make sure you keep that mental awareness and keep you healthy as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because my next question was going to be based around that, in terms of you've spoken about what you've been able to feed off of him in terms of his mental strength and his ability, and how it can benefit persons like yourself now. And we know that you've had these ambitions to manage at the highest level, and you're taking that aspect of your career now you're stepping up there, and you've begun a course or started that journey towards getting there. So how do you see this fitting in? Because clearly now to be a manager at that level, it's going to take more than 90 minutes, as you said before, to really, to get that done. Tell us about that, because we know you've been up to some things in recent times.
Yeah, well, the fitness, the football side of it is totally different. I mean, that's no responsibility. You kind of just go out there and play the game that you enjoy doing. I think now that I've gone to a different stage in my career, certainly kind of played the game that I love so passionately and love playing. I can't do it at my age, but I still got the desire and the passion and the knowledge, certainly in the game. As you mentioned earlier at the top of the program, the knowledge that I've had over the years playing at the top division, winning all these sorts of trophies, playing among the greatest players and them ever to play in the sport. And you come to a stage where you, in your mid-40s, probably even close to 50, you go in different direction. And I feel that, having time off, having worked in the media, having worked in various different aspects, being a global ambassador for United, traveling the world, seeing what you like, and then you thought, yeah, all that is great, and I've been very blessed to come out of football and have all these options, that are available to me, and like I said, working in the media, working for United. But I feel deep down inside that with all the knowledge that I've gained, I feel that I'm in a good place now to, take up management, and I've echoed that before. And then, obviously I wasn't being heard about it. People probably didn't quite sure what I really meant going into management, or it was just a kind of token gesture. And so I had to go back to the drawing board when I first applied for 2 jobs, one at my old club, Aston Villa, and one at Sunderland. I didn't get many response back. It was quite difficult, and I thought this was going to be maybe an opportunity for me to get into management, but it didn't quite happen that way. As a matter of fact, I find it extremely difficult. But then also along the way, I understand that I had to cross some T's and dot the I's, and that means getting my qualifications as a stepping stone. So I didn't really complete my A. I got that completed now. I'm now been elected to be on the pro license. So that because of the pandemic, we've been doing some virtuals and doing some online courses to get into this pro license. So I've done the course for the last 2 or 3 months in this pandemic. And out of the 35 applicants, there were 24 places available. And I'm pleased to say that I'm one of the 24. So still a little bit of ice to be dotted. As I said, I've crossed the T, having the A license, but the pro license is something that I'm now on. I'm looking to complete, but that gives me the opportunity to apply for jobs along the way. So with a little bit of luck, people get the news and realize that I've been making some progress in that department.
And that's fantastic. So that UEFA Pro, obviously you're going to start that in 2021, because that's quite a lengthy process as well, because I know I spoke to Russell about that, and it's quite a tedious course, but worth it at the end of the day, and you're going to be among some of the best in the game in terms of the instructors and stuff. So how much do you look forward to that?
Well, looking forward to it. I mean, I am very much into the management aspect of it, not just the coaching side of it. The game has changed so much, it moved on. So you want to be a head coach. So that's obviously being the manager of the team rather than the one who does all the coaching. And so I don't really want to be doing all the coaching, although I want to do some type of coaching. But I overall wants to be, being able to select the team, make those decisions, get players, getting the best out of players week in, week out, and most importantly, get to win football matches and play some exciting football. And so that's what I'm working towards. And I think doing the pro license will enable me to apply for the best jobs or the best jobs that is out there. Now, I'm not saying that I would, but I feel that, people now will take you a little bit more serious that, like I've said before, I'm crossing the T's and dotting all the I's, and people can say, well, have you got your qualifications? although we've seen in the game, there's people been fast forward without their qualifications, but that's another topic. But I feel from what I needed to do from an individual point of view was to make sure that I cross the T's and dot the I's, and that's what I'm doing. And so this pro license enabled me to put myself in a position to make sure that I can now, walk the walk and do the talking as well.
As you spoke about all that experience that you've soaked up in the game, especially as a player, you would have worked under some of the best managers in the game. And tell us about that. Some of the guys that you've worked with, you've played under, from the Sir Alexes to the Atkinsons and Bertil Sinclair, Leo Ben Hacker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I think the people who know the history behind me, and of course, not if they don't know anything about me, it obviously all started from a very young age. And Bertil Sinclair was my mentor, my coach at the very beginning, and still someone that I speak to, that I respect his opinion. But he was very instrumental in my development as a footballer. I'm very thankful and grateful for that. He's been more than that in many respects. He's been a father figure as well, someone I can talk to, someone who I respected and looked up to from that prospect. But most importantly, give me the platform to understand what football and what football can do to you as an individual. It's a life skill. People just see the game as a sport, but what football does for you is the discipline, the sacrifice, the dedication, the commitment, the timekeeping, your training schedule. You have to you look at that. If you don't have those ingredients, you will never make it. So I was and we all know that Bertie was a very disciplinary sort of a person, whether you hate him or like him, but he stood by what his beliefs was, and some liked it, some didn't. I embrace it, and it really put me in good stead. So I'm always thankful for what Bertil Sinclair really installed in me from a very young age. And so moved through the ranks, and Gally coming, seeing him as the head coach of Trinidad, that was an experience. As a teenager, coming through the ranks, playing the World Cup qualifiers, coming ever so close with the strike squad, to coming ever so close to being maybe one of the youngest player ever to play in the World Cup. That wasn't to be. America, we all know the history behind that, so that was a huge disappointment. But looked at Gally, he had some experience playing abroad, and 1 and 2 players in among that squad, and I embraced it. And I was very lucky to have been given that chance and opportunity to go to England. And so it was a no-brainer for me. That's something I've always wanted to do. So going to England in 88, 89, and on the trials with Calvin Hutchinson, unfortunately, Calvin didn't make the grade, although I thought he was outstanding in the trials that we've been for. But for some reason, Graham Taylor didn't give him the contracts, and I was the fortunate one out of both of us. And so what I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So for me, I know that this was either make or break me, and no one is in the Caribbean region, let alone in North America, been able to play for a Premier League team, so to speak, Aston Villa, which was one of the top clubs in England. So it was a no-brainer. Having to convince my mom to sign the form for me to go as a teenager, as a minor, was probably heartbreaking for her. But I was obviously delighted that I was given that chance to go to England.
Perfect. Dwight, now that you're out there and you're seeing what is happening, I want to talk about your time at Aston Villa, where certainly that's where you had a lot of success early in your career. And you look at Villa today, they've had a really good start to the season. They're in 9th place, and just about a couple of wins off being in 2nd place from what I'm seeing with matches in hand. What do you make of the setup at Villa now? And looking back to when you were there, and that really gave you a platform before you went over to Old Trafford. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I joined Villa at a very young age, I knew that this is a club that been successful in Europe. We've been knocking on the door of the Premier League in a couple of years before, and so I knew I was into a very big club. I didn't understand it until I really got there and understand the magnitude of the football club. But for me, the most important thing as a teenager was to go in there and adjusting myself to the way of life in England, the food, the people, the weather, the culture, and obviously, professionalism, which is something that I never knew about. I just knew just to go play football. I didn't know about timekeeping and all of that discipline. Some of the things I mentioned, things that what Bertus Sinclair was trying to implement back in the Caribbean, back in those days. And, you could see why he was so highly regarded because of the experience he'd been abroad and seen how professional teams operate. And he tried to sanction those kind of stuff when he comes back home, but we didn't get it. People were like, oh, well, it's too disciplinary and all that. So when I got there, I understand the magnitude of that part of the game. And of course, I was only signed a 2.5-year contract and I was still a teenager. So it was very much in the balance. A kid coming from the Caribbean, which is renowned for cricket, not football. Not a lot of people give me a chance. And I felt that in that 2 years, I needed to make an impression or else I would be back in the Caribbean like so many other footballers. And I felt that I needed to be different. And different doesn't mean because of the color of your skin or anything. Different means that you had to be better than the people in and around you at my age. And so my work ethic was my biggest strength. I loved the sport. I was in love with football. So that's all I knew. That was like a relief for me to, once you give me a ball, I can talk to the football, that football could understand me, and I was in control of that. So that gives me an advantage that I was already playing international football. Some of these guys at my age, 17 years, wasn't close to that. So that gives me a slight advantage. But it was simply amazing when I got there and I realized that, this was made for me. So I had to take full advantage of it. And I did that from a very, the 6 months was tough because I was missing everybody. I was used to all this training and, sort of demands on you every day. But once I got the hang of it, it wasn't a problem for me. And, so Villa, so my success, it was a progressive thing. I had some big names ahead of me, some senior players, and that was always going to be challenging to knock those guys off the pedestal. But I was determined to, and one by one, I keep getting that. And of course, under Big Ron Atkinson, that was a challenge. He was a different character, a different type of management. I'm a kind of no-nonsense kind of manager. He kind of scream at you and try to wind you up and try to get the best out of you in that way. That didn't particularly go down well with me, but it was what it was, and I had to deal with it and somehow get my head around it. But then it all changes for me in 94, 95, I think, when Brian Little had taken over from Big Ron. He kind of laid the foundation from the day he walked through the door. You had seen me play maybe in wide right and left, wherever I could play in the team at that time. And he says, listen, you are my number 10. I want you as my number 10. It does help when someone played at that level, who played in a similar position, who can see themselves in me. And so that transition between him and I was very straightforward. So he just says, wow, I can't believe you playing left or right all this time. Just go play center forward, use my main guy. And I think that was the kind of green light for me. That's when I really felt I come of age after maybe a period of maybe, I would say 4 or 5 years of just playing in and out the team, not getting a regular spot. But then once Brian Little had come in and give me the green light to say, yeah, I'm your main man, that was all I needed to do. And I kind of kicked on from there. And I was getting stronger and fitter and getting the recognition, certainly in that time period.
Excellent. So I want to touch, because of the way the conversation is flowing, I want to touch on a topic that probably could be a little bit sensitive and debatable as well, but to hear from your perspective. You mentioned the experience of playing for the national team before you went to Villa, that 89 experience, how it would have helped you. and you can recall, and these are things that the players have to deal with. But you would have recalled during that mid-90s period as well, when you were establishing yourself in England and then having to come back home and play for the national team. You know, people were questioning your commitment to playing for Trinidad and Tobago. Some people felt that you were protecting yourself because of, you know, obviously injuries and these sort of things, because of your career really was in the UK at that time. What do you have to say about that? Because you see that and you hear people say things, but you to yourself would have known what was happening and the reason behind it.
Well, I think I can understand people think I'm not, at times was given 100%. I think that's rumors been flying around. I don't think I've ever put on the national colors and not try to do my best, whether it was good enough for them. But I felt from a personal point of view, I was giving everything that I could, you know, bearing in mind the teams, there was other stars ahead of me, Russell Latapi, other people, senior players. So I was never really in the sort of forefront of things. And I think when I started playing for United, that sort of come into question. But I recall one time probably my longest injury in football. I got injured playing for Trinidad and Tobago, and I had to go back to Aston Villa. And then I think I was out for 3 months on and off. I keep coming back, but keep rupturing my thigh muscle. I got that thigh muscle. I strained my thigh muscle playing for Trinidad and Tobago in a CONCACAF game, I think, back in
World Cup qualifier against Jamaica, I think.
Yeah, one of those. And so I went back and then trying to get fit. I couldn't get in the team. I was out. I would say depressed to a point, to a little bit, because I couldn't get myself fit. And every time I come back, it keep occurring again. And so I looked at that and I never got a call from Trinidad. I never got a call from anybody, you know, seeing how you are, what's the struggle, how are you going along. And I thought, wow, you know, this, you know, and then you have to, when you get to that stage and you're fighting for your life up in England, you're not sure where you're going to go. If things go belly up here, if things doesn't work out, what is my next step? Does Trinidad and Tobago help me out? I didn't see it that way. The advice I was getting was to make sure I look after number one, get yourself back fit, get yourself back in the team, and then start making noise again. And, you know, and people was writing Trinidad and Tobago off in so many ways that we would never qualify for the World Cup and all that kind of stuff. Why are you wasting your time? This is your future. So I was getting mixed messages in between. But when it comes to Trinidad and Tobago, I've always tried whether it was good enough for other people to pass their judgment. That's entirely up to them. It didn't. In my opinion, it was a fair comment. It wasn't a fair comment in that sense. But people entitled to the point of view, and whether I accept it or not, that was irrelevant to me. I had other idea. I was focused. I knew exactly who I wanted to go, and I needed my career to be back on track. And certainly, and that's when I took it up on my own to make sure that, you know, I got another 4-year contract. Then I can start, you know, running back to Trinidad and Tobago and playing for the national team, because, you know, that injury made me, you know, think again. And so I did that. And I did that in the best interest of Dwight Yorke.
Surely. We've heard about the 73 squad that almost qualified for the World Cup in West Germany. And then you had the 89 squad as well. But a lot of people tend to believe that team that you were part of around the late 90s into the 2002 qualifiers, there was a transition between Bertil Sinclair, and then in came Ian Porterfield and then René Simoes. People call that squad, that group of players, the golden generation of Trinidad and Tobago football, because of the fact that you had players like yourself who were at the top at that time, Russell, Stern John, so many players in Europe as well. And you know, we had a really good run in the World Cup qualifiers for South Korea, Japan, and then things didn't go according to plan in the final round. When you look back at that campaign, you know, what do you make of it? Because you know, if you remember in particular the opening game of the final round away to Jamaica, you had just come off a hat-trick against Arsenal, and you flew to Kingston, and we lost the game 1-0. basically a freak goal, which that guy probably would never score again in his life. And that really set the downward trend for us in that campaign. But what can you recall about that? You know, with that squad, you had all the players in the team were at the top of their game. But again, we had come off the Gold Cup, which Bertel took us to the semi-finals, and then in came Ian Porterfield. What can you recall about that period?
Well, I want to agree and disagree in some ways in your analysis in terms of the golden generation. I think what you're kind of referring to that generation is that we had players who were playing abroad at professional level. And so it gives us a better look, you know, a more experienced, well-talented group who is now playing professional football. But I'm sure the 74 team and the team just before the 74 team, they will say that their generation was arguably the best. You know, Ron Lafferty and them will probably have something to say about that if you know these guys. So the thing is that we have always been blessed with so many talented people. And I'm sure there are people now looking back, even the late Sedley Joseph, who as well, you know, that team in particular, although I was young, I could very vaguely remember what that team's like. But you hear the history and you look in the history of football, those players were exceptional players to the game. Just they didn't have the experience of playing abroad. So yeah, I think the team that you mentioned in the late 90s and the early 21st century, these players had the exposure of playing in Portugal, in Scotland, in England, you know, whereas the other generation never did. But talent for talent, Trinidad and Tobago has always produced wonderful footballers, some of the best players that I've seen. And I'm not saying this because he's my best friend, but Russell is right up there with the best players I've, you know, played with at my club level with. And so the problem we had, and we were always an entertaining kind of, you know, sort of mentality rather than the winning aspect of it. I think that's something that we needed to tighten up on. We were more, you know, more of an entertainer rather than more like, you know, entertain but win football matches at all costs and what we need. And I think we were a little bit naive in those years. You score one, we can score two, and, you know, so on and so on. And I think that's something that I felt that we were lacking in that department. So, yeah, I mean, it's always going to be debatable, but that was a wonderful period in terms of, you know, I was at the top of my game and I was playing with players who was on the same wavelength as you. When you come back, there was some sort of, not just discipline, but some kind of professionalism within the ranks as well, which is what you need when you come back on international, because often enough, you can get a little bit carried away because of where you are at your club level. I mean, I was probably part of it in some ways, but I understood, and I think that's something that we needed to bring in a little bit more into the game. Hence, as later on, as we get into the conversation, I got better at it, and the discipline side of it as to, you know, what we needed to. We wasn't the talent was never in question, but was the mentality of how we can get the best out of those talented players and winning football matches. And I think that's something that we wasn't quite good at until obviously Leo Beenakker came in and sort of cement that towards the end.
As you talk about Leo, what was it like, you know, you as a player, having played under established managers before, and then first time with your national team, you have a manager of his caliber. What was that like, you know, being the captain of the team as well?
I think what I like about Leo didn't come in to change anything. He didn't come in to change our culture. He's seen a team that is full of talented players, and we just needed some organization, a little bit of belief, and a little bit of discipline. And he saw me as the leader of the pack with a big personality who could influence these players, who had respect. I think as the captain, I had respect throughout the team. Even though, you know, Russell and those guys were there, and Shaka and everybody, and, you know, I felt that it was a time for me to be responsible. I was very much, when I was younger, a free spirit. I didn't want the responsibility of the leadership quality. I was never in kind of that. I wanted the senior players to take that mental. And so when that sort of landed on my doorstep as the new leader of the pack, I felt that and anybody who knows me, I had to do it right. If I'm doing something, I had to do it right. I wasn't just going to be the captain of Trinidad and Tobago. I wanted to be the captain with a good leadership quality, but with one eye, and make sure that when we come to play that we were preparing right and everything was going to be done properly, and not people getting above their station, and keeping everybody in line and check and balances, and make sure we try to get the balance right, as well as having some fun when the fun time was right, and keep the focus. And that was my job as a player. And of course, you got to make sure that you set the standard as a captain as well, on the pitch as well as off it. And that was my biggest role. And I was pleased to say that other players looked up on me as that person because of my achievement. I suppose that does help when you play for Man United and you win European Cups and win in Premier League. There is an element of respect there throughout your peers, and I felt that I got that throughout the team. There was no one questioning any of the decision. Decision was made, and everyone just kind of get on and make the decision. But it was a great honor to play with Leo Beenhakker. Simple reason, he was well experienced. He had the knowledge, he had the know-how, how to get the best. He was nothing flamboyant. I like some of the stuff that he did, and some of the things that I would like to do when I become a manager that I'd taken from Leo, because I thought he was outstanding in terms of what he had brought to not just the national team, but to the country. It gives us a sense of identity that was kind of missing there. And, we all embraced what he was doing. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to make sure that we got to the World Cup, and the only World Cup to this day. So it was a real privilege.
Certainly. Dwight, you played for the national team up until 2009. When you look at that, that's 2 decades of playing for your national team. But it's an easy accomplishment, right? It meant also that you would have been through it all from a player perspective with the FA, and that relationship between what at club level would be club management to players. You're talking about from players now and teams with regards to the FA. How important is it for that sort of relationship between the FA and players and coaches to have some level of balance, for there to be a cordial relationship, especially now with the climate of international football? What sort of advice would you have for those who are at the helm now, both at national team level and also at the FA, in terms of making sure that the ingredients are there and everything is there for a successful campaign, if you want to see?
Yeah, I think players' welfare is very important. You got to look after the players. You got to get the players feeling that they're very much part of the organization. I'm not sure if I can pass any ideas on as to how you go about that, because, at the end of the day, their bread and butter is their club football. It's where they, got their contract, where they feel a little bit more secure. I think playing for your country, it's a great honor and a privilege to do that. It's the most patriotic thing you can do, is represent your country. But equally, you still have to have that balance of understanding and trust with the FA, the people at the helm, that they're doing everything that is possible. There is a clear path of understanding between players and organization, and there is really no conflict when it comes to your well-being in terms of your personal contract with your football club, and you don't want any beef, so to speak, between your club and your country. There should be more dialogue is taking place when it comes to players and relationship with their clubs. I think that's something that they need to look deeply into, and certainly make sure there's a fair and equal transparency between both club and players. And I think if you can find the balance somewhere in between there, then you find that the player always willing to come back and play where the national team is concerned. Now, I don't know. I have an idea what England and those teams are doing because they got the best and they got everything pretty much down to a T. Certainly where our country is, there's been some misunderstanding. Travel arrangement is not make what it's supposed to be made. One thing is said, and when you get to the airport, it's something else. And and I think when you having those mishaps and those misunderstanding, it does bring a sense of dishonesty, misleading stuff. And I think, you end up kind of getting tied up in all of it. And it's really is frustrating when things like that are happening. It doesn't help, players getting back, and it certainly doesn't help with the club that you play for.
Yeah, because we've seen so many different experiences and we've been through it as well.
Yeah, I've been through it as a player, so I kind of know what's going on, and that's frustrating. And I've been at the very best and the frustration. And I think we need to sort out the little things. The little things are the ones that mean more rather than the big things that people, looking for. The mean things, the travel arrangement, you get there, things are done, when you get to the airport, you're supposed to be picked up and not waiting around and, on time. And those things, we should be really nailing those things now. And I'm sure it's nowhere near as what it used to be. And I dread to think what some of these players and administration are going through with the difficulties that we are facing right now with our association.
All right, Dwight. I wanted to shift back a little bit to your personal career at club level. We took the opportunity on your page to open up the floor to some fans who have a couple of questions. There's one particular question that stood out for me from Patrick Benson, where he's asking if you can just, off the top of your head, if you can list who would probably be the top two most challenging teams you would have faced in the Premiership, and where would you have liked to play? Like a couple of your favorite clubs you would have liked to come up against.
Challenging teams. I mean, my time of playing in my era, I think Arsenal was always a top team. I think Liverpool, when I played at Man United, they were the most the biggest game that to play in for sure. But Arsenal, the team that they possess with the Vieira and Henry and Bergkamp and Ian Wright and those type of guys. I mean, and Tony Adams and David Seaman at the back, they were a really tough team to play against. You had to be at your very best to get anything from these teams. So I would say they were more the challenging team. They could play. They can, if you needed to play rough and tumble with them, they could man up to that. They had a bit of mentality and in your face, kind of bold. And so you had to be brave and you had to be strong and you had to be determined to get past these guys. So that for me was one of the biggest challenge in my time playing in the Premier League. Liverpool, I love to play against Liverpool because they come to play football. They were open. They're always going to give you a chance because they're a footballing team. They come and play open and attacking style of football. So as a bowler, you always enjoy that type of open up games that you're likely to get a chance so you can show what you're capable of doing. And so those are the two teams I enjoy most of the time. I'm very lucky and very fortunate that I've been able to score against them on a few occasions. So most challenging for me.
And in European football as well, where would you have liked some of the better places you enjoyed playing outside of England?
Well, again, I've been very lucky. I've probably played in most of the stadium. I don't think I haven't played in any of the stadium. The San Siro was an amazing place. The Aesthetica in Germany, it's one of the best. Bayern Munich Stadium is one of the best in modern day game that I've played in. The team that I didn't enjoy playing against was Real Madrid. That's the only team I've never scored against. I've scored against everybody. Barcelona was a great place, 110,000 people there at the stadium. When we played them, that was sensational. Playing against those international players, those Brazilian boys, was amazing. But Real Madrid, for some reason, I just couldn't come close to these guys. Every time I played against Madrid, I failed to score. I never really had an impact in them because the likes of Ronaldo and Zidane and Figo, they were magical type of players to play against. So, yeah, I would think, I've been very blessed. I played in, I would say, most of the stadium and really had much success against.
Right.
And that is a rare thing because I had success against everybody else, but not Real Madrid.
It's good to hear. It's good information for us. Those who would have, been wondering what your career has been like for you on a personal level. There's one more question from James Edwards here as well. He's asking if you had to name maybe 3 or 4 players that you really felt were top of the table in terms of playing with or against. Who comes to mind over your career? I mean, there's so many players. But anybody that you could kind of say that.
I think the original Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo. I think I applaud him when he scored a hat-trick against us. And even though he wasn't at his best, but I've seen him on so many occasions. He used to torture teams. He's just absolutely thrilled to see him play. He was so fast, but he was controlled fast. The ball would stick to the feet. He can always go another gear when he needed to. I think there were so many of them. I mean, who am I thinking about? Romario at his best. Stoichkov. I mean, them is some serious ballers there. Those guys. And I mean, in particular my age group, Zidane was a class act. Roberto Carlos, I mean, them guys, and Cafu and them flying down the wind like you never seen those guys. Like, they were fullbacks and yet they were like attacking fullback, what you kind of see a little bit today. But them guys been doing it back then.
Yeah.
Taking shots and before you know it, they're blocking you down at the other end. And it's just kind of crazy. There were so many wonderful footballers that I played against. So it's difficult to single out. But if I were to single out one, I would think the original Ronaldo. I've seen Messi live now, and I've seen the new Ronaldo. Those two are just another level in itself as well. So there's so much.
I can only imagine, Dwight.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of your career as a manager as compared to what you were as a player, but even during your playing days, some people are eager to find out what were some of the special things that kept you motivated, other than the fact that you were playing on the biggest stage and you wanted to be part of that stage, but there also would have been challenging times, and there would have been periods in your career where it wasn't always as smooth sailing as one would have liked, but there was always something that kept you motivated to perform at that level, to give your best. Is there anything that you can share on that? Probably a young.
I think the one thing that keeps you motivated is the fact. It's a fact. The fear of failure. I think. Failure is a word that doesn't really balance well with me. And if somebody say you're gonna fail, that kind of motivates you to drive even further. And people who knows me, who know the kind of individual that I am, I think just the fear of failure, it just keeps you motivated because, I think there's a few people out there who like to see successful people get more successful. There's people always waiting for you to fail, and I certainly experienced that. But it does keeps that drive and that spirit up to keep going and never give up. I think that's what I've learned, and that's what keeps me motivated. I could easily not say I want to be a manager, I can continue to live the way I'm living, and I, continue to work for TV, and I could continue to be an ambassador for United as long as, they want me there, and that seems to be there. It's been 10 years that I've been working in that role, so why take that option? That's such an easy option. The fact that I've been disappointed that when I applied for a job at Villa, they didn't give it to me. When I applied for a job at Sunderland, never got a response back. That drives me on. That tells me, okay, I'll go back to the drawing board and start again, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going back to the drawing board. I met up with Sir Alex Ferguson. I reach out to Steve McLaren. I had lunch with those guys. I called Gareth Southgate, who I played with at Aston Villa. He was my captain. I had a conversation with him, asked to meet up with him. Went back to United, looked at sessions, looked at this, talked to various people, what I need to do, how could I get in, and so the simple fact that my point is that I've been knocked back before, and the more people do that, the more it motivates me to go forward. And so this is not a done deal. I've got some unfinished business here, and I'm not just doing it because I want to prove people wrong. I'm doing it because I think I'll be very good at it. And I feel that given a chance, and that's all I ever ask of, is, that equal opportunity, which since the Black Lives Matter movement seems to have kicked in, it kind of really moved the bar a little bit in many respects, which is pleasing to see. And I feel that the opportunity will happen, but I need to be prepared, and which is what I'm doing. And I'm going to keep knocking on the door until I get that opportunity that I crave for. I feel that I'm in a good place to do that. And with having all the qualifications, then let's see what the excuse will be this time around. And so I'm hopeful. I have a belief, and when I'm determined for something, I usually do it. And it's just a matter of that opportunity has been given. And I like the fact that, and I said it before, I don't mind people being fast forward into jobs. People been given opportunity, young people, which is great. The names that are out there is so obvious. Not going to be calling names, but the reality is that I feel when it comes to black players or black potential players who wants to be managers, we feel that there is an injustice, the inequality, the stereotype, all of those kind of stuff, that you're not competent or you're not intelligent enough to run an organization. All of those things are things that I want to show to people that we are and beyond and capable of giving that. So I embrace people giving the opportunity to new managers that are given those opportunities. But when it comes to black players, that opportunity seems to be very limited, and it's the proof is in the pudding. You look throughout the Premier League, there isn't any black manager. We know one in the Championship now because Chris Newton has been given that role back at Nottingham Forest. And if you want to broaden your horizon a little bit in the Italian league, there isn't one. In La Liga, in the top division, is there any? There isn't. In Germany, is there? No, there isn't. So it's a bigger challenge than we anticipated. You thought with all your credentials and what you've done in the game that you might be given an opportunity, but I find it extremely difficult. And so with the black movement, with the Black Lives Matter movements, that seems to, I won't say open the door widely enough, but it certainly have us all engage a little bit more, and people have finally starting to take notice. And it's the action has been, it's not enough action at the top thing, but they say that there are things been moving in that direction, and we're yet to see it, and so we're waiting to see if that will happen. And I just want to make sure that I'm prepared when that opportunity comes my way.
Yeah, God willing, I think it will come. As you said, you get that sense that something is going to happen, and it's just for you now to grab that opportunity, which I'm sure you will. Just to give the fans an update as well, I know you mentioned to me recently, a few weeks ago, you had an opportunity to work with the Man United, was it the U23s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was all part of my process when I, again, had these conversations with these ex-managers as to where I feel I can sort of make some input. I've been very lucky that being a global ambassador for United, the door is open for me to go back at the training facilities and work among the coaches and have an insight on, the everyday training sessions from the coaching, from the sports data, which is something is huge, the sports science in football, which it was there when my time, but it's certainly moved another level. Didn't have the opportunity to interact with the first team this time around simply because of the bubble. You had to be in for the Premier League, so that kind of stole me in that sense, to see how Ollie behind the scene operate and all of the staff in and around him, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. But nevertheless, the under-23 was a good insight of where football it is today, how it's all operate, what is expected from the coaches, the sports science, the players, how they prepare, the preparations, all of those things. Even in this very difficult time, I was be able to have an insight to that. So I'm going to try and embrace that a little bit more, have a little bit more insight, as well as your own ideas, what some of the things you like, some of the things you don't. I certainly am concentrating on the managing side of it, not so much on the coaching aspect of it, although the coaching aspect, I will still be able to want to be doing some coaching sessions, certainly from a striking point of view. But I overall wants to be the manager. I want to be more focused on that department. And so that's the next step with the pro license. Hopefully that would give me more access to go into the Man United first team dressing room and look at Ollie and speak to Ollie, and it's not an issue. As I said, I've been very lucky that those doors are open to me. So I'm going to use that to my advantage as best as I could and gain all those knowledge, because football continued to move forward. Even though with all the experience I've got, you realize when you go in that it's gone up another level and it keeps going up, and certain things that they used to do is certainly things that they're not doing anymore. And so that gives you a sense of where you need to be, and you will get it eventually, because at the end of the day, you will have a team. It's not just about me, it's about my team in and around me, the people who I employed to be my assistant and my, the rest of the backroom staff. Those are the people who does mainly most of the hard grafting for you, and you as a manager, you are ahead of that, but you having your eyes open and being able to assess players on a daily basis. So this is all part of the learning curve. I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm raring to go, and it's just about that opportunity been given. And I'm not being greedy. I just want one chance, just like I did as a player. And I feel that I continue to just prepare for when that moment happens.
That's excellent. Right, this sort of conversation is one that I think can go on for hours, but I know, we all have our schedules to meet. Just a couple more from my end. In terms of, from your perspective as a past senior professional, as an ambassador for the country, what would you have to say to our boys here back home? I know country is still very dear to you. The right approach for our players now under the current circumstances of the pandemic, and you have World Cup qualifiers coming up. There's so much more to be done in Trinidad and Tobago football. What would you say to these guys to get them motivated again, to adopt the right approach with the right resources to hopefully have a future in the game?
Yeah, well, our football has been in one of disappointment. It's been in a real dark place at the moment. So where the team and where we are as a country as a whole is not where I envisage us being at the moment. So we're in a real kind of bottom of the footballing world, where we were like sort of middle of the road and we will look like we were going places. So having said all of that, I feel that Trinidad and Tobago need to look at themselves as to what they're trying to get back some kind of recognition and some kind of identity into world football again. And I think what they need to do is, if I were in that position, I would start to play the Caribbean teams again and start engaging with them a little bit more in terms of trying to reestablish who's the number one Caribbean team. And to do that, you play the likes of Barbados, Grenada, play all those teams, and Jamaica and Cuba, and get some international experience in and around you. And I think that's where Trinidad and Tobago need to focus on and try to get that confidence back in playing the game and get that sensibility of what, that fear factor, what Trinidad and Tobago once had in the Caribbean region, period. We were alongside Jamaica in that sense, that the two fair teams that you didn't want, or any teams. And I feel that right now, I don't think any team will fear us in the current position that we are in. And I think the players who are now in that, in this time that is representing our country, they need to understand that this is their time, right? Forget about the past, forget the history, look into it. Yes, I get that, because that's what I did, and that should be motivation enough for you too. But this is your time, and your time means it can only happen with these guys. So we can't come back in time to help them. These guys need to do more. They have to understand what it takes to represent your country, because it's the most patriotic thing that can happen to you. That sense of joy, that sense of happiness that you're representing not just yourself, but your family, or your friends and family, and everybody in and around Trinidad and Tobago. And I think that until we get that sense back, what it means, because I think we've gone away from what playing for Trinidad and Tobago means. And you have to ask those questions to these players. What, instead of just playing a game of football, it's more than that. It's not just playing a game of football. You're representing those qualities and the things that I mentioned to you before. And so you have to have an honest look. I think people have to have an honest look at themselves in the mirror and to see where we really want Trinidad and Tobago football back to where it once were. We have some very challenging times ahead. We certainly don't produce the kind of players that we used to once produce, that have the experience of playing in all these golden moments that you mentioned, Sean. So we have to make some baby steps again. It's not going to be overnight success, unfortunately. We all would like to see that, but it may have to be some baby steps. And if I were part of the organization or any advice, I would think I would concentrate on the Caribbean again. Get that feel again about being number one in the Caribbean, because you can't be anything else. You can't achieve things against America and all those kind of teams if you don't feel like you're number one, or you have anything in the Caribbean, because you're just either Trinidad and Tobago like it is, and people just expect you to get beat. But if you start playing Barbados, playing Jamaica, and getting some good results again, and getting that atmosphere coming back, I think that will help the football going forward. That would be my advice, rather than look at all these big games and international games that we continue to get beat and get embarrassed. Look for somebody who you have a chance of beating, and just try to get some confidence back and try to build that rep again. That's what I will do if I was in charge of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's not easy. You still got to go out. There may be lesser team, might not be the most attractive team that you want. You want the big name teams, and because at the end of the day, you want to make money. It's good PR, but equally, you want to make sure that the team is ready and prepared to, when it comes to the World Cup games, that they're ready to play. And the only way you're going to do that is if you get confidence and you start beating these lesser teams in and around you. We're saying lesser team, but I'm sure every Caribbean country now probably fancy themselves against Trinidad and Tobago because of where our football is at the moment. So until we start getting that right again, then I'm afraid that the football will be a start-stop situation. One day we might get a good result and everybody go off on it, and then we come back down to reality again. There won't be any consistency, and that's what you need when you're playing at this level. You need consistency. And you need the public to get behind the team again, because we kind of lost that football again when we were playing. You couldn't get tickets to come to the stadium because people were so passionate about it. I dread to think if Trinidad and Tobago were to play now, how many people will be queuing up to go watch that team. So again, you have to have that sense back and that trust back and that belief again. And the only way you're going to do that is beat those lesser teams, get those games under your belt. Might not be the most attractive teams, but you're building more moral, you're building that support again, and you're getting that confidence back in that team, and people start believing again. And then suddenly Jamaica come into town. That's a nice game when you start beating the likes of them and you start beating Jamaica, because that rivalry is always a nice, passionate kind of game to look forward to. And so you get past that and you get a good game against that. World Cup suddenly on your doorstep, games starting to produce, and here you go, you're off and running again. That's what I would do. Forget America, forget playing all those big fancy teams. Start small, baby steps again. Go back and start beating those lesser teams and get some confidence. Remember them days when you beat team 8-0, we used to beat those teams 8-0, 7-0. That's a good feeling. Build yourself up again. Our football is in a mess. You don't go after the big teams. No, there's no point, because you end up getting beat and embarrassed again, and then you go back to the drawing board again, and it's like, where do we go from there? Start again. Cut your losses. Start again. That's what I would do.
I'm sure there are people who will agree with you, and those who are looking on and hearing this. And we can only hope that, going forward in 2021, the right things are done, the right people are involved, and that sort of approach and mentality that you've been speaking about is what we would adopt more as we go forward, because the challenges are huge at the moment, probably the biggest that we've faced in a very long time, as you would have said before, and we can only hope for the best. Dwight, I want you to take this opportunity to just maybe extend greetings to your people, to your fans all around the world who've been following you. It's been a difficult time. It's been a very trying year for everyone. And thankfully, we are able to be here to have this conversation and to talk about 2020 and look forward to 2021. Tell us about, your whole take on what life is going to bring now.
Yeah, I think you said it, Sean, it's been a very unprecedented time for all of us, a very uncertain time. It's been difficult for many families, many young boys and girls around the world in terms of being able to do the things that they once used to do. But we have to respect the pandemic at this stage, and you have to obey the rules and regulation, wear your mask, social distancing, wash your hands, do all the right things, because we have to beat this pandemic. Because if we don't get the best out of this pandemic, then everything will remain the same. So we have to be vigilant, be disciplined in that regards. Listen to the lawmakers and them, the people who call the shots out there, and try to follow the guideline. And on top of that, we are close to turning the corner, as they say, with the vaccine being out. So it's just a matter of time. I know people are, struggling at this very, very difficult time. I understand that it's not been easy for so many families out there, but we still got to try and do the right thing. And hopefully that we always see the light at the end of the tunnel, because with the vaccine being, sort of distributed around the world now, that people are being vaccinated, and hopefully that will be encouraging. And 2021, although, we will love to see the back of 2020, but 2021 is just around the corner. Stay positive, and stay believing in what you believe in. And hopefully with in 2021 that people will be much more successful. Christmas might not be the Christmas that we all used to love and celebrate. We have to do it in the right way. And the New Year's celebration may not be the way it was as well. So it's very important that, we just have to be doing the right thing at this stage, just to get through this very difficult time. I'm sure in 5-6 months' time, there will be some type of normality. But everybody out there has to play the role. Everybody has to do the right thing for us as a nation, as a country, to get better. So from me and all my family, want to wish everybody in Trinidad and Tobago a Merry Christmas and a fruitful New Year, 2020-21. So you guys take care, stay safe, continue to follow the guidelines, and God bless everyone out in my country and around the Caribbean.
Thank you, Dwight, and excellent as well. Same to you. I want to take this opportunity to wish you the very best. We know you have a lot to look forward to. You have some big plans in store for 2021, and we'll continue to follow you. And we will be in touch. Yorkie, all the best to you.
Thanks, Shirley. Appreciate it. Thank you, boss.
See you, bro.
And it's another one. 3-0. Terrific play by Dwight Yorke. And here's a fine challenge by Cole, and it's led